Hello, everyone. This is Morris Jackson with Religion, Economics, and Politics. We have another great show lined up for you today. Stick around and we'll be right back after this short message.
True strength is forged through unwavering consistency and relentless perseverance. In every step, every workout, every single day. Our supplements are meticulously crafted to empower your journey, providing the vital support your body craves to recover swiftly, train with unmatched intensity, and conquer new horizons.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Morris Jackson with Religion, Economics, and Politics. And you're probably wondering, why is he wearing that hat? Well, this episode is titled The Texas Showdown. Yes, I'm going to talk about the politics and the political shootout that is happening right now in Texas between the Republicans and the Democrats over House seats. All right, so I'm going to take this hat off and we're going to get down to business. And I am so glad you all joined us today. Look, before I get started, I always like to put things in scriptural context because I want you all to understand that God is in control, and no matter what we see, we have to understand and put things into its proper perspective. So to do that, I'm going to read you a scripture from the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 10. And this scripture, I believe, will sum it all up really in one sentence. I mean, we could literally shut down the podcast and walk away after this scripture. But of course, we won't do that. We will elaborate because there's some other things I want to talk to you about. Exodus 1 and 10 says, "Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land." So basically, the Pharaoh saw that the Jewish people were prospering in the land and that they were becoming, they were multiplying and they were outnumbering them, and they were saying, hey, let's deal with them wisely because, you know, if war breaks out, they'll join up with our enemies and they'll escape from us. So when we fast forward to this situation here in Texas, this is all a numbers game, just as it was in ancient Egypt. And when the Pharaoh was worried about the Hebrews outnumbering the Egyptians and fearing that they would lose their power, lose their influence, and that they would no longer be able to oppress, the Hebrew people. The same here, folks. Look, the Republican Party understands that they just passed this awful bill. They passed this bill that they know will hurt a lot of their own constituents, and their constituents are starting to realize what's happening. Millions of people, those very same people who voted for Donald Trump, are going to lose their health insurance. They're going to lose a lot of benefits that they depended on for their livelihood. They're also coming for Social Security. Again, a lot of their own constituents will be hurt by this. And they fear that, you know what, we may lose our edge in the midterm elections. And make no mistake about it, Donald Trump is also worried that if he loses the House and potentially also the Senate, he knows because of the Epstein files and some other crimes that he's being accused of right now, he could very well be impeached. And this could be the nail in the coffin for him. So what has he done? He has went to Greg Abbott and said, look, I've got a couple of loudmouth representatives here. They're giving me some problems. Representative Crockett, Al Green, I want to get rid of these folks. How can we get rid of these people and at the same time get me 5 more seats? Greg Abbott says, no problem. We'll redraw the lines, the district lines here, and that'll get you 5 seats. So now, this happens normally about every 10 years. Well, it does happen every 10 years. Sometimes the maps stay the same. Sometimes they're adjusted because the census is taken every 10 years. And according to the population, the maps are redrawn. Now, the Republicans just did this during the last census which was approximately 5 years ago, which is what makes this highly unusual because they're doing this in the middle of the cycle. Now, this stinks of election rigging because this has never been done before in the middle of a cycle like this. So, what they have done is they have redrawn those maps. Of course, we know the Democrats tried to stop it or at least delay it until they could garner some support and come up with a strategy to counter this move by Greg Abbott and the Trump regime. So they left, they broke quorum, they went out of state, and that gave Democrats around the country time to strategize and figure out what are we going to do? How are we going to respond to this? So Governor Gavin Newsom said, hey, you know what? If Texas does this, we are going to draw or redraw our own district maps, which let me break it down to you. So Texas has 38 seats. California has 52, of which 40 of those seats are already democratically controlled. They're occupied by Democrats, 12 by Republicans. If California redraws their district maps, which they're going to vote to do in November, they could stand to gain anywhere between 5. I think they're saying the minimum is 5 that they're almost guaranteed to pick up. So that in itself would nullify what Texas is doing if they are successful in picking up those 5 seats. If California is successful in picking up all 12 of those Republican seats, then that would give them a net 7 gain or net 7 advantage over anything that's been accomplished in Texas. Now, that's granted that Texas can't even pick up all 5 seats because remember, they did this 5 years ago and it didn't necessarily work out the way that they had anticipated. But make no mistake about it, Texas is mostly Republican, and that's because of how they have drawn the maps. And what they are trying to do is to break the stranglehold that Democrats have over the blue islands or blue districts, as we like to call them. You know, your Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, heavily Democratic. So what they did when they redrew these maps is they've taken areas that are just blue as you can get, and they spread them all out across red districts, ruby red districts out in rural areas. And the districts make no sense when you look at them. For instance, if you look at Austin, they have taken downtown Austin and spread it out across all these rural areas, all the way out to Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M is roughly 100 miles from me, from where I live. I live about a good 300 miles, or I would say at least a 3.5-hour drive from Austin. But I only live maybe an hour, 15 minutes up the road or so from Texas A&M. It makes no sense. So what they're doing is they're trying to dilute that blue vote and basically nullify it or drown it out, if you will, with all of the red votes spread across those other districts. It is a power grab. It is a blatant power grab and an attempt to rig the midterm elections. I don't know what else to call it because you don't do this mid-consensus. You don't do this mid-cycle. You only did this at the bidding of Donald Trump. It is just so obvious. As a matter of fact, once the Republicans were able to hold a quorum again after the Democrats returned and they passed these new maps, they actually said themselves, they being the Republicans, actually said themselves that the only reason why they did this is to improve the Republican performance during the midterms. That was the only reason why they did it. It had nothing to do with the constituents or making things fair. It was just basically to improve the Republican performance. Now, California isn't the only one. Gavin Newsom is not the only governor who said, yeah, hey, we're going to fight fire with fire. You have the governor of Illinois saying we are going to do the same thing. This could be huge, folks. Oh, and don't forget, the governor of New York also said she would do the same thing. This is huge. So I don't think the Republicans are going to get the results that they are seeking. There's not much wiggle room in a lot of these red states to gerrymander out any more Democratic seats anyway. I mean, they've almost maxed out. They really don't have a ceiling, which is now, I think, ironic, because now you have Governor Greg Abbott trying to sue California to prevent them from doing the same thing that they're doing in Texas. It's because they know and they understand that the numbers are not on their side. Just like the Pharaoh, he understood that the numbers were not on his side. So he wanted to come up with a plan in order to keep them under his control. And that's what this is all about. I want to pivot now, and I want to talk about a method of gerrymandering that we often don't talk about, or at least I don't hear anyone talking about it. And it is a diabolical and evil plan. It is called prison gerrymandering. And this, I would say, is almost exclusively a Republican tactic. So this is a throwback to the slavery era. So slaves actually counted towards the population of the South. But those same slaves could not advocate for themselves or their families. They did not have a voice. They couldn't vote. They had no representation whatsoever. Fast forward to today. Prisons are located where? In rural areas, ruby red districts. They get to count those inmates or prisoners just like the old slave masters could count their slaves towards the population of the South. Now, I ask you, what's any different about that than it was back in the slavery era? They still have no representation. They cannot vote, but their bodies are used in order to bolster the power of those who have them incarcerated or locked up against their will. Now, I'm not saying that those who are in prison shouldn't be there, because if you commit the crime, you should be there. But I also think that there should be no way that you could count inmates toward your population and gain House seats on the federal level. On the local level, that also counts towards their commissioners, city commission seats. I mean, you're talking about resources. You're talking about decisions made at the local level. All politics is local, folks. So when they say that, believe and trust that it does. There are at least 5 counties right now that are responsible for 5 seats right now in the state of Texas. It's just plain as day. Now, I'm only looking at Texas because I'm most familiar with the local politics here in Texas. You could probably say the same for other counties. Here's the other part. Most of these inmates that are in prison in these rural counties, they probably come from blue districts. So not only have those votes been lost during a current election, but also for elections in the future, because we know that in a lot of states, once you're a convicted felon, you lose your right to vote. You cannot vote. You're even though you paid your debt to society, you are now criminalized for the rest of your life. You cannot vote. You are stripped of your civil right to be able to do that. Yes, I believe to vote, that is a civil right, and I don't understand what one has to do with the other. You're still a citizen. You do not cease to be a citizen once you've been convicted of a felony. The other thing is, those prisons, they also create jobs for those folks in those red districts. Also brings in funds and money, and it supports the local economy in those areas. And some of those areas, if it was not for prisons and the bodies that are housed in those prisons, those towns probably could not survive at all. So they're double and triple dipping. But that is called gerrymandering or prison gerrymandering. It is diabolical, folks. It is just, it is so evil and it is so backhanded. And I think ironic because you get the same people who are saying that illegal immigrants should not count towards the census. So let's look at the census numbers. In California, you roughly got about 1.5 to 2 million illegal immigrants that live in California. If you were to cease or stop counting illegal immigrants, California will probably lose anywhere from 2 to 4 seats. They still would hold a lot of seats. California is a very populous state, and it's not because it's primarily populated by illegal immigrants as some people would have you to think. Now, let's shift the focus to Texas. Texas has roughly the same number. I'd be probably about 500,000 less. If they stopped counting the illegal immigration or the legal immigrant population here, we would probably lose anywhere about maybe 2 to 3 seats. California still would have the edge over large states like Texas. Folks, I know that it's a lot to take in, but I'm just telling you, look, God is still in control. And just like back in the days of Pharaoh, and he's trying to manipulate the system, God still turned that thing around in favor of his people. I want to tell you, don't be afraid because God did not give us a spirit of fear. A lot of these things that we are seeing, they have to come to pass. And no matter what they do, they are not going to be victorious. To quote one of my favorite Christian rappers, Soup the Chemist, he says, their arms are too short to box with God. They haven't learned, but they keep signing up for that knockout. But look, folks, you all stay encouraged. That is the Texas Showdown, which I believe God is going to win that, and we're going to come out victorious. And when we do, everyone is going to know that it was God, not the hand of man. You all take care. I want you to remember that your best life is still ahead of you. Don't give up. Don't stop. Keep going. This is Morris Jackson with Religion, Economics, and Politics. Be encouraged.